I don't know. That's a good question. Hmm. I would say that people always say that I'm like smart, I guess. Yeah, people say I'm smart. That's a common compliment that I get. Hi, my name is Chantelle Henriques, and I am an ultrasound tech student at St. Clair College. I was born and raised in Brampton, and I moved about 7 years ago, so in 2013. After I was done university, I just wanted to move to downtown Toronto. I was so happy to be out of Brampton. I was like, now I'm going to live my best life. I don't have to live in Brampton anymore. As I got older, I definitely grew to miss Brampton a lot because one, sort of all my childhood friends moved out of Brampton. The only people left are like my mom and my brother. So it kind of feels like all of those memories left too. My childhood friend used to live on the same street as me, and now it's not her house anymore. So it feels kind of weird. So I do have this sense of nostalgia for Brampton sometimes. And sometimes I do wish that I appreciated it more while I was there. My life shifted in two ways after I moved away from Brampton. In one sense, I felt more free. Then in another sense, I missed it. When I moved to other cities that were a little bit smaller and not as culturally diverse, I realized that growing up in Brampton actually gave me this unique perspective on the world that other people didn't have who may not have lived in such a diverse city. Even little things like the different cultural foods and dishes that you can get in Brampton. You know, I do think that Brampton has become more diverse now. In the 90s, when I was growing up and going to school, it wasn't like that. Especially in elementary school, I was probably only one of two non-white people in my grade. My brother and I were two of five in the entire school. Looking back on that, I realized, oh yeah, that was kind of a thing. But growing up, I obviously didn't really notice that too much. But it was kind of strange now that I think about it. People would say, oh, you're not white enough to hang out with the white people, and then you're not black enough to hang out with the black people. So I was kind of in my own category of people. And then my hair was really light when I was little. Sometimes it would look almost red in the sun. So I had someone call me Black Chucky, really rude things like that. I had a crush on this one guy, and he was like, oh, I think Black Chucky likes me, or something along the lines of that. And then it got back to me, and I was just like really sad. People assume that because I'm from Brampton that I'm a little bit ghetto or rough around the edges. I know living in Windsor and even London before, when I would tell someone that I'm from Brampton, they're like, oh, like she's a Brampton girl, and it has that connotation that I'm going to snap at any second or that I'm going to beat people up. I've never beat up anyone in my life, but it's just being from Brampton gives that kind of perception, which is funny. I did push people, and like girls would push me, I'd push them back. Never anything too serious. I pushed someone on the playground, and then I had to go to the principal's office, but I've never actually physically hurt someone too badly. So when people are like, oh, she's from Brampton, watch out, I'm like, I pushed someone on the ground, but who hasn't when they were a kid? The term Brampton boy, from my experience and the way that people use it, it kind of means someone who lives in Brampton who is not a good person. I remember the first time I heard someone use that, they were describing my brother because my brother is this person who's lived in Brampton his whole life. He's never left. He loves living there. He gets into fights and he has that temperament. So I always associated Brampton boy with someone kind of aggressive, born and raised in Brampton, probably never going to leave and likes it that way. It wasn't very multicultural at all. My neighborhood was a lot of white people. My mom's white, so she lived in like a predominantly white neighborhood. My dad was probably one of the only Black men who lived in that neighborhood. So it's a very different world now than what it was when I was a kid. When I first moved to downtown Toronto, when people would ask where I grew up, I was actually really embarrassed to say Brampton. So I'd be like, here, like Toronto, I would kind of group it together. I'd be like, oh, I was born in Toronto. And then people would be like, oh, where? They'd call me out on it. And then I'd have to say, well, actually, I was born in Brampton. And I was kind of embarrassed about that. And now when people ask me, I'm more proud to say it, I guess. My good memories and a lot of like the things that I learned about just appreciating other people comes from Brampton. But I would definitely say that I'm not as embarrassed as I was before. Someone asked me now if I was from Toronto, I'd correct them and say I'm from Brampton. And I think that people don't actually understand how close Brampton is to Toronto. It's only about 20-minute drive. So it's like the next closest city. So I usually describe that to people who are like, oh, where is that? I'm like, it's just 20 minutes outside of Toronto, just to give them some geographical sense. But I make sure that they know there's a distinction between them and they're not the same. I've always been this outside straggler on any sense of community. And I think that is tied just to the fact that, you know, I grew up in this city where there were a lot of white people and I never really felt I fit in anywhere. So I think that I'm still searching for my community. And that's been hard, especially because I've been moving a lot. Every 2 years, I have a new city. So it's kind of hard for me to establish community. I would say I definitely am involved in online communities, Black Lives Matter communities, things like that. But I don't know if I have a physical community in the city that I live in right now. One of my favorite spots in Brampton is everyone pronounces this differently. So Chinguacousy Park is how I pronounce it. That's the neighborhood that I grew up in. And I remember just going tobogganing down the hill. And I don't know if this is true or not, but people always said that that hill was made of garbage. It was once a landfill, and then it turned into like a ski/toboggan hill. So it would be funny to hear people talk about that who were maybe new to Brampton. They'd be like, oh, is that the hill that was once garbage? And I'm like, I don't know. That's the hill I tobogganed on. Maybe like 50 years ago it was garbage, but I don't know. It's just funny that people bring that up. People say Chinguacousy, like they pronounce the extra G, and I'm like, the G is silent. It's Chinguacousy, just one. I don't know if they're like from there, but they're definitely living there now. They'd be like Chinguacousy. I'm like, no, 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 no. um, yeah, I forgot where I was going with that.